Good evening! Welcome to the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast, the official podcast of FinalFantasy.fandom.com. The internet's number one, I suppose, Final Fantasy Wiki. I think we're on the top of the Google charts, right?
We're definitely number one.
We're definitely number one. Number one in our hearts, number one on the Google charts, number one in your mind. If there aren't any other Final Fantasy wikis out there, please delete your website, because you are not needed. We are better than you. Also, we
Wow,
are...
that got really mean.
It did get really mean, but you know what? We don't need the competition. This is our territory. We do it better than anyone else. And, also, other languages, thank you for your service. We're the best English language Final Fantasy wiki that exists.
Yeah, all respect to all of them. They have a grind out there with the other languages.
Yes. So my name is BlueHighwind, and I host this thing that we do every month. Joining me are these two people.
Hi, I'm SomeColorMage.
My name is Technobliterator, and I don't host this. I've never hosted this before, but I do appear all the time.
You are on this a lot. This has kind of become the main trio at a certain point.
At this point, yeah.
Yeah, we are sort of the
okay.
main cast.
We're the reliable
Just a lot
ones.
of the admin schedule either doesn't line up or they don't volunteer when it does line up.
Yeah, it helps that we both have jobs that are like flexible hours jobs.
And I'm the one that pushes to make this happen. So I have to literally go in and grab two people, and SomeColorMage and Technobliterator just happen to be the ones that run the slowest. So anyway,
I would not place any bets on that. I run the slowest. I'm pretty sure I could outsprint you.
in
I
real
mean,
life,
he's also got very, very long arms. I mean, he reaches all the way from, New York or so, all the way over to Sydney to grab me, so...
North Jersey.
North Jersey, okay.
North Jersey. I have Schloopy Loopy arms. If you get
Yeah,
that joke,
to be
you've been
fair-
on the internet too long.
To be fair, if your arms are that long, it doesn't matter how fast you run, really.
Well, my arms are so long that if you run really fast, I'll just throw another arm around the Earth and catch you from that direction. You see? You can't avoid me. Not on a spherical planet. You'll need to find some other kind of dimension. I think we've ended up off topic, haven't we?
Yeah. That didn't take us very long.
It did not, no. So, on tonight's program, we are first going to talk about news, then it is time. You've all been waiting for it. It's the summer of MORB. We did it just in time for the joke to not be funny anymore. Because...
It's Morbin time.
Yeah, no one cares anymore. It's over.
No one cares anymore.
If we had done it last month, it would have been very funny, but now no one cares. So it's Final Fantasy Mobius is the game we will be discussing. But first, we got hot news. So much hot news. This was honestly kind of a big month, so we're going to have to go through it. I think first thing we need to talk about is SomeColorMage. I know this was about 3 weeks ago, but what was up with these billboards?
Okay, so Final Fantasy XIV had a very interesting week at the beginning of the month. So first of all, they had the reveal of the next patch, and a lot of people got really mad because every expansion in Final Fantasy XIV has a storyline about you making a weapon that gets throughout the expansion it gets improved more and more as you go through the storyline. And this expansion, they announced that this expansion's weapon quests are going to be about Hildebrand, the recurring comedy quest line that a lot of people get annoyed at. So
shit, I remember
lots
that
of
one.
people mad. And then there was a patch at the beginning of this month that introduced the feature that from now on, because it used to be that you could, when you start on a server, you can then cross over into any server on that data center, and they upgraded that so that now you can visit every data center in one location. And then within a few hours, the system completely crashed, and they had to put out a message saying, "You guys were using this 15,000 times a minute. We can't keep up with that." And they did eventually fix that. But then the billboards happened.
Okay.
So this there's this one on everyone's favorite server for drama, Balmung. Balmung is an American server. It is the biggest server on the Crystal data center, which was basically a data center created just to quarantine Balmung because it was too fucking big. Like when they announced there's like Balmung and 7 small servers. And this free company was holding an event in the game. And they decided, we're going to promote this in the real world. Billboards in Texas and California, and display our fucking event that we're going, our Summer Spectacular or whatever, I forget what it was called. And then things, of course, went to absolute shit the second they showed up. Because, well, just, you can tell just from the premise of the entire thing, this was entirely fucking stupid.
So they
but they made it worse.
Billboards.
Wait, so
they
some...
bought several real live billboards. I think they supposed to have bought like 4, but the ones in California hadn't gone up yet before they called the whole thing off.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm not versed in Final Fantasy 14E, so this is not Square Enix buying billboards. This is a guild in effect.
This is just regular players of the game. Well, I use regular, but they're a free company on Balmung, so regular is being stretched very hard here.
Okay.
And yeah, they bought these billboards to promote their own event that they made that had nothing to do with Square Enix, which is, of course, where one of the problems came in, because they actually used the Final Fantasy XIV logo on these billboards, which is very much against the terms of service. And they managed to make that even worse, because one of their characters that they put on this billboard was wearing an outfit that hasn't been released yet. So the only way they could have done that is if they data mined that information and then modded it back into the game, which is even more against the terms of service. And just like that part of Fallout, that was pretty swift. Square Enix just like banned the user that owned that character for a couple weeks.
So if some idiot decided to advertise to the whole of the state, like, yo, I did something illegal in this game.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What? Why would you, like, what the fuck, man?
So you didn't just post it on Reset or anything like that with an anonymous account. You posted it over a freeway, over a city.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right.
I think I forget where they all are. I think one of them was like outskirts of Dallas, and like one of them was in like the middle of an industrial district. How many people are going? How many people who actually play Final Fantasy 14 are going to see a billboard like that's nowhere near where people live? We're all shut-ins.
Well, I don't know. Some of them must drive. It's Texas. You can't. They don't. That's like a third world country. They don't have public transportation there.
Hey.
Sure.
It's true.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sorry,
that's
it's
kinda
true.
true.
Well. You guys do have a high-speed rail project that, in theory, may happen. So.
In theory, may happen.
In
yeah.
theory, may happen.
You
Yes.
know, who
God
knows?
bless you,
Hopefully,
please.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. But yeah, to those who live outside the US, because it freaked me out when I came here. Like, they have so many, like, they just have a ton of different billboards on the side of the road, and 9 times out of 10, like, it's like accident lawyers or something like that.
Oh, this is
Accident
not
lawyers or just religious preaching. There's a ton of that on billboards from what I understand from America.
Yeah, there is a decent amount of religious preaching, right? There is a good amount of it, but 9 times out of 10, it's accident lawyers. It's, you know, sometimes there's political campaigns there, but they just have these, like, massive things. And the point is, because people drive so much and they drive so far, that they have these just on the side of what Blue was saying, like a freeway, right? And the idea is, like, you know, that some passenger in the car will see a number on the side of it and then text that number, right? Whereas, you know, in Europe, obviously the roads are a lot smaller, so you don't really have a space for a billboard like that. They just have regular old advertising. But
yeah, I get
so effectively a billboard is going to reach a lot more people than, like, you know, your average, like, poster on the wall that you'd see in Europe would do.
Yeah, I can tell you the billboards on my way home today were there's a new chicken sandwich at a restaurant chain. That's Panera Bread. There's a new chicken sandwich. They wanted us to know that. Shen Yun, that weird kind of regressive Chinese
Shen Yun
political
dancing.
thing. Yeah, that they were advertising
Yeah,
that.
they have that.
Multiple
There's a lot of
hospitals. Extremely upsetting billboard for a children's hospital. I don't particularly need that when driving. And let me think, what else? Oh, there was a Save Ukraine one that was up for a while. Yeah, so that's unusual in the rest of the world, because that's just part of the fabric of my miserable existence here in this country.
Yeah, I mean, billboards exist here, but why the fuck is there a billboard for a hospital? Jesus Christ!
Look, I can't even.
Private hospitals were, yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you what's going on with the politics. Actually, recently there's been a big uptick in children's hospital advertisement. I don't know why that is. You know what? It's probably we're way off topic, but I think it's end of COVID and stuff like that.
I can make a guess, but yeah, it's off topic, and even if it wasn't, I wouldn't want to vocalize it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
That sounds fair enough.
All right,
Yeah,
so
but basically, what you need to know for the context of the story is, you know, a billboard like that is gonna reach a lot of people, like a lot of people. So they must have spent a shit ton of money on it, like, because they're competing with freaking, you know,
Panera Bread.
Yeah, they're competing with, like, Panera Bread and all these massive corporations. So this must have gone for a lot. So basically, whoever runs this freaking FC, they must have all, like, pulled their money together and had enough for 4 billboards in the state of Texas. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But
this all went to shit for various reasons, and people just started piling on them even harder and harder. Accusations came out that they'd been embezzling money from charity fundraisers to pay for this stuff.
oh wow, this gets even weirder.
I am just bringing up some of this stuff I have because I can't remember it all, and it was still a complete train wreck. And, like, people flooded their Discord servers, and we got some spectacular fucking posts from them trying to defend themselves. I got a couple here. I'll read them out because holy shit. For the people hating on this, you're a bunch of stupid C word. It's a fun marketing tactic, and you're just mad because you don't have the money nor mental capacity to hire to get this done. So fucking what if it's bordering on IP issues? You're not the company, you're not their legal team. Get back to sucking on your mum's ancient tit and quit your whining.
Whoa!
For the people who are here for fun, Jesus, can't wait for Saturday.
what the fuck?
So that's Balmung, huh? All right.
Wait, so they put
and
that on a billboard?
No, they didn't put that on the billboard. That's something in their Discord server after people start whining at them. And I'm going to say another one because this is a spectacular one. And if anyone is familiar with my Twitter account, you might notice that I replaced part of my username with a few emojis. This post is why. Okay, everyone, since you don't listen when I'm nice, I'm going to get mean. Reacting to messages with a clown, a skull, or a nerd face isn't funny. It's not cool, it's not interesting, it's annoying. Those 3 emojis in particular aren't funny. They're rude. We as staff work hard to keep this place safe, and to have you all constantly react to our messages with mean emojis makes me furious. Stop reacting to our messages with rude emojis. They do nothing but make me look really, really stupid. It shows you have no rebuttals to our arguments, so you have to use juvenile tactics paramount to terrorism in order to stop us from being able to speak our truth. From now on, if you react with any mean emojis, I am writing your name down. If you are a serial reactor, your username is going to a Google Doc. At the end of the month, I will take this up to the appropriate authorities for them to investigate and arrest you.
Okay. All right.
These are the people buying fucking billboards in this country.
So
Alright.
you can guess what the 3 top reactions to that message are, and
Was it the turtle emoji, perhaps?
no, that one is not on there, surprisingly.
Huh.
I mean, it might have eventually, but at the time of this screenshot, we have 2 popcorns, 5 tomatoes, 6 L's, 25 nerd faces, 25 skulls, and in first place, 32 clowns.
Okay, well, I think the crowd has spoken.
Yeah.
And this eventually just collapsed until a bunch of these people basically hid their entire online presence.
Oh, man.
On a side note, this FC did have a website because a lot of free companies have their own websites for some reason. They took this down smartly, but of course it was already on the Internet Archive. I went to this website, and God, it was like the apex of dawn of the century. We don't need to actually program in HTML anymore. We just make our entire website out of Flash energy. Everything was
I missed
so
that.
shoddily animated. And Flash doesn't exist anymore, so this is all done in HTML5, which, hurts me even more as someone who is like a professional JavaScript programmer. And God, it was so sluggish and overly animated. Also, they had this one room that they advertised as a sex dungeon, and this is the tamest sex dungeon I've ever seen.
Okay. I want to go and... I want to go and be the nice guy to these guys, because, they like their game. Alright? They like their game so much they're willing to spend $10,000 probably per day.
If that. Probably a lot more.
I don't know. I actually have no idea how much a billboard costs, and I'm not going to look it up. But I'd say 10.
Yeah,
you're looking at 10,000, 100,000, probably less than $1 million, obviously. But they just wanted to go have fun, and it blew up in a very bizarre way. And I'm not going to hate on them for using Square Enix's IP because fuck IP law. I don't care. Go ahead. You want to go put Cloud Strife kissing Sephiroth on a billboard? I think you're the hero in that story. But once you
I'd support that billboard.
Yeah. But when you get to the point when you have to start putting... once you get to the point that it becomes that level of blow up, at that point it's time you gotta take the L, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love that freaking rant that the man them did about, why are you reacting with the clown emoji?
Yeah, that's when you've lost.
Posting our truth.
That's when you've lost. You've lost the argument at that point.
Yeah. So that's about it for that one. There is one more recent Final Fantasy 14 thing, because
didn't they get banned this sorry, SomeColorMage, didn't this guild get banned?
No, they banned one person for a few weeks because of the blatant modding on display on the billboard, but aside from that, they haven't really done anything.
Okay.
I mean, so there's just one more Final Fantasy XIV thing that's a bit more recent. So at the start of the month, they're introducing the next major patch. A couple days ago, they put out the key art for that. The art is focused around the patch's raid, the second tier of Pandemonium, which is about basically hunting down a bunch of monsters that got loose in a secret ancient facility in the region that takes place like 15,000 years ago. And a lot of people have gotten really thirsty for this art because there's this guy in the middle that everyone is pretty sure is La Habrea, and he's fucking hot in this art.
Let me see if I can find this art. This is Buried Memory. Is that what this new expansion's called? This is 6.2?
Yeah.
Alright, Buried Memory key art. I'm gonna go find it. La Habrea. I thought that was a chick. So that tells you how...
No, La Habrea is a dude.
So people are thirsty for the daddy in the middle here?
Yep.
Okay, not the pink-haired dude on the left.
I'm pretty sure people are thirsty for him too, but he was part of the story in the earlier patches, so they've already thirsted at him.
What is he holding a baby in this art? No, I'm not sure what he's doing.
Jeez, I gotta look at this thing again now, because
well, there's an evil version of the daddy at the bottom. There's two twinks jutting him on either side. There's somebody in the back behind a cathedral. There's a lot going on here. All right, you know what? If you're freaky for La Habrea, be freaky for La Habrea. So I guess that was
the
yes.
Guy holding the baby. Do you mean the guy on the right? I think that's just his mask.
No. It's the guy in the middle. I'm not sure what he's holding. He's holding his arm is like to his left, and he's like holding something.
Oh, the red thing that would be his mask, and that's why they're pretty sure it's La Habrea, because like the leaders of the ancients have red masks.
Oh, is this the Organization 13 crew?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. These are the Askians.
The past versions of them.
This is the past Askians. Am I right?
Yeah.
All right, I know some Final Fantasy 14 now.
The one in the middle is probably La Habrea. The one on the right is probably Elidibus, and the one on the left is La Habrea's son.
Oh. Well, good for you. Pink hair.
That one shocked people because everyone thought of La Habrea as a complete weirdo gremlin, and then in patch 6.01 or whatever, it's revealed the dude fucked.
Oh, well. I mean, good for you, La Habrea. Not everyone in Final Fantasy gets to fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I was going to name characters, so I'm not going to do it. So, I guess we should do the rest of July's news, right?
Yeah.
So, speaking of expansions or whatever, we have Final Fantasy Origin? Stranger Paradise. Remember that thing? Chaos game?
Yeah, Shadow the Hedgehog is getting a new update.
It's Trials of the Dragon King, where
Bahamut, basically.
I've seen a clip where you become Bahamut and you blow shit up, and it looks pretty goddamn awesome.
I haven't played this yet, and I can explain why later, other than I've been playing a bunch of other stuff. The big centerpiece new job is Summoner, and Jack, being Jack, he doesn't give a fuck about those lesser summons. He just wants to summon Bahamut and keep summoning Bahamut and wreck shit with him.
Well, this was my main complaint, because there was no Bahamut, and Bahamut is a major part of Final Fantasy 1. It's essential that he's here.
And now we know the answer is because they saved it for DLC.
Yes. How much is this DLC? Because I remember this game had a season pass. I'm trying to look that up.
So I believe that it's only available as a season pass. So
oh,
yeah, it's kind of like how how Nintendo does DLC. They
Okay.
just bundle all of it at once, and you just buy it all at once.
So it's
Yeah.
$30.
I'm not sure if the season pass is currently standalone, or you have to get the upgrade. Or
It's
Yeah.
kind of
Buying this
bullshit
game is a bit
because,
messy.
like, yeah, it's kind of bullshit because it's like, you know, you don't know if the DLC is gonna be good yet. You're kind of like you're putting money down on the promise that maybe you'll enjoy it.
Well, you could still buy the
but-
DLC now. It's $30. I think you can purchase it whenever you want.
Okay. The only time I bought a season pass was for Final Fantasy 15, and the reason I bought it was because I knew I was going to buy the DLC anyway. And that's not because I had any affinity to the game or whatever, it's because I know I'm going to have to write articles about this, so I'm going to have to regardless. Like, so I may as well get the season pass, and it's going to save me money down the line. And that's the only time I've ever bought one. Like, aside from that, I don't think I'd buy a season pass unless I like really, really trusted the developers or like really loved the game.
I got a season pass for Batman Arkham Knight, and the first batch of DL. Yeah, I think that's a great game, just to be clear. But the first batch of DLC was like a Harley Quinn mission, and it was about 30 minutes long. And it's at that point I'm like, I'm done with this game, and I'm not coming back to it. Even though massively underrated Batman Arkham Knight. You know what they should do? They should make another Batman Arkham game.
They should.
They should make another Batman Arkham game.
I don't think it's as good as Arkham City.
It's
I
not.
do think
but
Arkham Knight is very good. Yeah.
It's actually way underrated
I
game.
really miss those games. Yeah, I really miss those games. I want to go play them again. You know, it's basically like if they took Batman the Animated Series and made it a video game, and it is a pretty damn good one.
Oh, you know what? I see Warrior of Light in these pictures for Stranger of Paradise, like the Dissidia one.
Yeah.
Oh, so you fight him too?
Because I haven't played it, I don't know the full thing, but I do know a couple parts of this plot. So, Stranger of Paradise is ended with the Warrior of Light entering the Chaos Shrine, about to fight Jack and lead to Jack's plan to finally get rid of all the darkness coming to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Except at the start of this DLC, Jack absolutely smokes the Warriors of Light.
Oh, okay.
And he realizes, oh, that's not what was supposed to happen. I need someone to make the Warriors of Light stronger for next time. So, hey, that's what Bahamut did in Final Fantasy 1. So that's who he goes to. Tells him, look, we need to do this loop again. We need to make the Warriors of Light stronger in the process. Can you like help me out here?
Do you know what this game is starting to remind me of all games? It's starting to remind me of Metal Gear Solid 5.
It's starting to remind me of Mobius Final Fantasy, a game we'll be getting to very soon.
We will be getting to that. But I think of Metal Gear Solid 5 because, it's like this game that came out like in recent times that's adding lore to a 2D game from 30, 40 years ago at this point. And they're just randomly adding a bunch of backstory to it that we didn't necessarily need, but at the same time, doesn't make it worse inherently.
Wait, Techno. You know what it is?
What's up?
It's Wicked.
What's up?
It's Wicked, the musical Wicked. That's what Stranger of Paradise is.
Yes, it
yes,
is.
It's all about, because the Wicked Witch of the West was the real hero the whole time, and in that musical, it's revealed that Dorothy was just a whiny little brat who was a pawn in her greater scheme. Yes, it's all that. And Jack will sing Defying Gravity in the next DLC. I promise you.
I would love to see.
So anyway, one more thing about this DLC is that apparently it's balls hard. I think I talked about the difficulties before, and once you beat the game, the normal game, you unlock Chaos difficulty, which
you said it wrong.
Starts at level 1.
You gotta say it right. Yeah, thank you, yes. Chaos!
Which starts at level 130, and you can keep bumping experience items into the difficulty to boost it up to 300. So apparently, this DLC, you have to play it on Chaos or harder, and it starts at level 200. And most of it has to be done in the new difficulty above Chaos, called Bahamut difficulty. And I don't know how hard this gets, but this morning when I was, going through the regular FFWiki Twitter morning routine stuff, I did see, the Stranger Paradise account praising this guy for doing a no damage run of Bahamut at the difficulty level 400. So
Ooh.
I'm guessing that's about where the leveling caps off. But it is apparently really hard, and that's why I haven't touched it yet, because I was kind of flailing around at 135 when I last touched the game. So,
Well, the game was too hard for me, so I'm definitely not going to do that.
Yeah, it was too difficult for me, and so I didn't buy the game. I tried the demo. I sucked at it.
Yep.
I knew I was gonna suck at it, but yeah. So, I'm glad there are people out there who enjoy the game. I don't. Nothing against it. I just suck at those games. But
All right.
but it's also like this was a huge patch and had a ton of quality of life things, a few balance adjustments. For most of the story, you can now play as any character instead of just Jack.
Okay.
This used to be a multiplayer only thing, but now it's available in single player too. Somehow they seem to have made Sage even more busted. It is very extensive changes just going through the patch notes.
Okay, we should... Do you want to just shotgun the rest of the news real fast and we go on to MORB?
Sure.
yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
Alright, so, first thing is that Forspoken, which was supposed to come out this fall, I think October? Or maybe early November. Doesn't matter because that date's gone. The launch date is now set to January 24th, 2023. For more polishing, is what the tweet says. And
Yeah, I mean, we can expect this going forward, to be honest. Like,
Yes.
at this point, like, they've done it for all their past couple of games. Like, so people saying, oh, Final Fantasy 16, summer of 2023. I'm like, no. It's going to be winter of 2023. Like, 7 Rebirth is going to get pushed back as well.
No.
I think...
No.
expect
No. No. Don't say that.
I mean, we don't want it to be the case, but, we may as well go in with that expectation.
Okay. Well, now that I'm sad, I want some...
I
yeah.
just kind of feel bad for the Luminous engine at this point. It just wants to put out games with more particle physics than a video can handle, and it's just only has 2 games that kept getting delayed over and over again.
Yep, it is a cursed machine, that thing. So, alright. Big news. Do you remember Final Fantasy X? Have you heard of this video game?
I think I have, yeah.
Okay. There's a kabuki play being made out of it, coming to Japan in spring 2023.
Which is pretty cool. If you were going to adapt a game to a kabuki play, it would either be that one or it'd be Final Fantasy IX.
I have no real knowledge of kabuki other than the vaguest cliches, so I would not be able to say, but I do actually want to see this. I doubt I'll be able to, but this sounds incredibly cool.
Same with me.
Next thing is, remember Final Fantasy X? Have you heard of this video game? Anyway, Final Fantasy
probably have.
Yeah, Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2 combined have sold 28.8 million copies over their roughly 20 years of existence.
And you have to remember that I think 10-2 sold about a third of what 10 sold.
Yes.
So, like, 20 plus million of those copies are from 10.
I believe the news was something like the original release on PlayStation 2 sold like 14 million, and they got another 6 from the HD remasters. So mazel tov to those games.
Yeah, the most recent releases are going to be skewed because they just bundled 10 and 10.2 together now. So
right, no, that makes sense. That makes sense why they have to put the numbers out like that.
Yep.
But I think, does that make Final Fantasy X the best-selling single-player game in the series? Like, has it surpassed 7 at this point?
I think you'd have to count Remake and 7 sales. And I don't know.
If you count Remake and 7 sales, and that's gonna throw everything off. And I think that would mean 7 would beat it. But
I think playing 7 is probably still ahead just because how many more places it's been out on.
Yeah, true enough.
I would have to look up the numbers. I don't know.
Part of me wants to say that 10 was a bigger game, but I'm not 100% on that.
I mean, I don't know the exact numbers either. We all know that 10 is one of the heaviest hitters in the franchise. So
yeah, what we know is that 7. Like
what?
And if we're not just counting single player, then probably 7, 10, and 14 are the biggest Final Fantasy games.
Okay. I have some bad news. Do you remember the NFT bullshit that Square Enix was doing?
They're still doing it?
Yeah, we have to go through this news, unfortunately. So, Square Enix is selling a physical Cloud Strife Figma, because they sell lots of these. They're actually selling a Miss Cloud Figma, which a person that you may know, his name is BlueHighwind, is actually pre-ordered, and I'm very excited for that. But this, I think I'm spending $200 on a female Cloud Figma. So I have self-control
what's
problems.
That?
Female Cloud.
No, but what's a female Cloud? What? Sorry.
Figma, the statues.
Figurine, dude.
Yeah, figurines.
Oh.
They're called Figmas, like Gunpla. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant you'd bought an NFT.
No. This is a male Cloud that you spend some large amount of money, about $130. And then if you add another $30, you get the Digital Plus edition, which is an NFT, which is actually just a certificate of authenticity on the blockchain. Now, why you would need a blockchain system for a certificate of authenticity, I don't know, and it seems like a much worse way of doing it other than, say, a piece of paper or an email or anything like that.
You've got the frickin' figure. Like, why do you need to verify that you've got the figure?
I don't know. To
It's
prove
like,
that it's not a
imagine if you
bootleg
bought-
one, I guess?
It's like, imagine if you bought a car, and then they said, oh, by the way, the title for the car is $30.
No, you have to.
The title of the car is actually meaningful.
Techno, I have some bad news about car ownership in the United States. You do have to pay extra money for the title, and you have to pay money for the registration for the friggin' thing every year.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that.
Yeah, you
when
do.
I bought my car here, I do not remember.
They probably threw that charge in, but that's all that's included in the price of buying a car.
No, that's probably what happened then. Yeah, because I honestly dead ass thought that all of that, it was just the car price plus the frickin' sales tax. Okay, well, I've learned something new.
Well, you know what? Actually, if you have a loan, your loan company probably owns the title right now, and they'll give it to you once you pay. We're way off topic. You didn't buy your car with cash, did you?
I did. My first car, I did.
Oh, but like the current car you drive now, your new car, you did not buy that out of pocket, did you?
The new car that has not arrived yet, no, I am not buying that out of pocket.
Okay, because if you did buy that out of pocket, we're gonna have a different relationship, me and you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start asking for some things from you. Anyway,
No,
so
I didn't buy it out of pocket.
yeah, this NFT bullshit they're continuing with very slowly, right at the perfect time, because at this point NFTs are such toxic terms that Minecraft has come out and publicly been like, no, you cannot make NFTs about your servers or whatever, your worlds or whatever you're trying to sell. You cannot do that. We're not allowing that. And Reddit launched some NFT thing and had to really desperately come up with some terms to say, no, it's not NFT. No, it's not on the blockchain. They're just tokens. You like tokens, don't you?
And like also in the gaming space, I think GameStop has recently managed to make NFTs even more toxic than previously imagined possible in the gaming
we
space.
cannot. Not that news.
We will not explain why, aside from the fact that they opened an NFT shop. But suffice to say, they put some really fucking awful shit on that NFT shop. So,
yeah. I'm not sure if that's actually true or just a rumor, but I don't want. We're gonna move on from that one. Anyway.
The concept of NFTs, I think the only people who actually care at this point are people who are so freaking rich that, like, you know, that's the point. It seems like, you know, such a tiny percentage of the population can actually afford this shit, and yet we're all hearing about it. You know, when you think about like fine art or something, or like, you know, freaking Bugattis, or like, you know, all those other things that stupidly rich people with more money than they know what to do with spend their money on. That's just kind of, you know, we let them have their little space. You know, they spend their money there, and they put their, like, you know, freaking Picasso art in their massive ass mansions, and then they don't bother the rest of us. But with this NFT stuff, we're all hearing about it, and that's why I'm so confused. It's like they're trying to make it a big thing, but it's like, no, there's only like 5 people on planet Earth that can actually buy that shit.
It's just scammers who don't realize that the music has stopped, and no one's listening anymore.
And you know, crypto freaking crashed.
Yep.
Like, crypto's currency has crashed, and there's a much better argument for that than there is for freaking NFTs. So I don't know why people are still spending their money on it, but you know,
hey, whatever.
It's what it is.
Anyway, I have already declared that the wiki's neutral point of view, I don't know if we actually have that written down as policy or if it's more of an ideal, does not apply to cryptocurrency in the blockchain. So if the topic ever comes up in the main space, you are allowed to shit on it with reckless abandon.
You are allowed to, as long as it's written in the manual of style, as long as it's MOS compliant and still encyclopedic. You can trash it all you want.
Yeah, basically don't swear while trashing it. You're allowed to do that on the talk page, but not in the article itself.
Yep.
Just, yeah, trash on it in a somewhat polite manner.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there's any place for that stuff. And anyway, within probably rapid amount of time, no one will remember that this thing happened.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
So anyway, in much nicer news, there is a Chocobo picture book coming out. It's called Chocobo and the Airship, a Final Fantasy picture book. It will be releasing in March 2023.
That's cute. It's a children's book, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. It is a children's book. I see on the cover, there's a Cid on an airship, and there's a Chocobo.
So it's something to buy your Final Fantasy fan friend
child
on their baby. Yeah. It's something to get them for their baby shower.
Yes. And the at least one wiki baby I'm aware of, you can go give them that. Though that kid might be too old at this point, because we're ancient.
No, he is.
Yeah.
He is at this point.
Yeah, he is. Alright, so, Tactics Ogre. Do you remember that video game?
Yes.
Okay, rumor is... The rumor has been swirling harder and harder around this, to the point that actually, basically everything leaked about it. That's coming out November 11th. It's called Tactics Ogre Reborn, and it looks like it is a straight port of the PlayStation Portable Let Us Cling Together version.
Okay.
Also, it's going to be voiced now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that actually is a big addition, because the original was not. Or any
That is
version
a
was not.
huge
Yeah.
addition. Yeah.
And Tactics Ogre has some real fucking hardcore lines, so voice acting those is good shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, if they're spending money on voice actors for it, that's gonna cost them. It's gonna cost them a decent amount. So they're not half-assing this port for sure.
Yeah, it looks basically the same as how I remember the PlayStation Portable version looking. Maybe the pixels are a bit too washed out if I zoom in too much, but that could also just be my memory being wrong, or the quality of the screenshot that Wario64 on Twitter got. I have tons to say about Tactics Ogre, and I think we may have to do a whole episode about it when it comes out.
The one graphics comparison I've seen is a bit weird, because like the character sprites, it looks like they've put on them an outline that has those crappy pixel smoothing filters on, but the actual character sprite itself isn't.
Yeah,
it's
I don't know.
Proper sprite art drawn in better detail than in the PSP. It's just got this weird smushy black line around it.
I'm not sure what's happening, and I'd want to see the official, non-leaked bits. Though I imagine what this is going to be what it is 100%, because November is coming very quickly, and unless Square Enix delays this because they have a ridiculously packed fall, maybe they, I don't know. Last bit of news here is that there is a rumor that Sony is gonna buy Square Enix. This is coming from Eidos.
Yes, another one.
Yes, yet another rumor. This is coming from Eidos Montreal's founder, who very recently had a very big bit of interviewing. There's a lot of details about how, this is Stefan Diastos, founder of Eidos Montreal. He quit, I think, like in 2014. Not that long after Square Enix bought it. He had some shit to say about Square Enix mismanaging the entire thing. Some talk about $65 million they were supposed to have in revenue that they may not have. What was interesting is that he specifically said that Sony's only interested in the Tokyo division, which I think he meant the Japan division, because this is referring to Square Enix selling Eidos Montreal on Crystal Dynamics recently for pennies on the dollar. Because
I don't think things like Osaka Team and Was ever count as different companies. It's all just Square Enix.
If I were Sony, I would want to buy everything that is Square Enix. I would definitely want that Osaka Team, because they're the guys that make Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I heard some people say, oh, it's Square Enix Japan, but then I heard other people say, it's Square Enix Tokyo, so it suggests to me that it's Square Enix Japan, and Tokyo is where the headquarters are.
Tokyo is where the headquarters are.
Yeah. Right. I think, from a business perspective, as far as Sony's concerned, it does make sense. Because on the one hand, you think of Square Enix as, this huge organization, this massive thing, and how could anyone buy such a big third-party publisher? Big man, Microsoft bought Activision. Anything's fair game at this point. But if you want to think of a third-party publisher that has as close as ties to Sony, as Square Enix do, I don't think Square Enix probably has the closest ties to them of maybe any big company, right? Obviously it would hurt Nintendo quite a bit, because Nintendo are pretty close with Square, but it might be a weird thing like Microsoft are doing, where they're saying oh yeah, we own Activision now and we own Bethesda now, but the games are still gonna come to other platforms. Sony might be doing the same thing.
So Microsoft has kind of been blatantly lying about that, and they don't want any game that wasn't committed before the acquisition to come out on anything other than PC and Xbox. Sony, on the other hand, is a bit more lenient about that, actually. First of all, because they have been expanding into PC recently, and also the Bungie have been pretty clear that Sony doesn't give a crap what they publish on.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say there is, with Square Enix, you're not just buying the games and the IP, you're also buying their merchandise department. And that's no small thing, because they do merchandise not just for their own IP, but for other IP.
I don't know how big
also
that
why
actually...
I don't really trust rumors about this kind of thing, because no one ever seems to have an answer for the fact that Square Enix has giant non-gaming wings. They have a huge merchandising wing, and they have a huge literature wing. We have literally talked about that earlier this podcast, because Chocobo and the Flying Ship. No one ever seems to think, well, hang on, Sony doesn't really want those things. They don't need those things. So what's going to happen to them?
About that.
Just nothing.
I don't know that I agree with that, because, like, you know, Sony have some pretty big IP, and they're trying to put that out. You know, we have a Last of Us show coming out. We had an Uncharted film earlier this year that everyone's already forgotten about. Like,
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, they definitely want to put their IP out on more medium.
Yeah, on more medium, but you know, for a lot of that, you don't want some of those wings. You definitely want visual work, but but there's a lot of that that's not really directly related to the game plan of Sony Interactive Entertainment.
I don't know about that, because to me it seems like quite appealing for them to be able to say, oh, we own Square Enix now, so now we can use this, you know, this department to, as well as making all their Final Fantasy figurines, we can make a Ratchet and Clank figure. You know, we can make a freaking Kratos now. We can make, like, you know, whatever.
I'm gonna say I'm not sure how big actually Square Enix's merchandising thing is. It's not
pretty big.
I know, but from my understanding, they're not maybe one of the biggest toy companies in the entire world. And versus
they're not one of the biggest on either, but you know, they are significantly substantial.
Okay, but if I'm buying let's say, I'm just gonna guess the value of what Square Enix is, just considering what Activision Blizzard went for. $25 billion. That'd be my guess of what Square Enix is worth. That's just from the video games.
Hold on. I just quickly look something up there. I mean, this is just going to be.
You may be able to have a better idea of how much.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Square Enix Holdings. So that's the entire thing. Square Enix Holdings. That is. Let's see. Last year's revenue were last year's net income 26.94 billion yen.
Okay, so that's what's 260 million.
Total assets in 2020 302.6 billion yen.
Okay. So that's in dollars. How much? Yen is $100, so you divide that by 100. What was that? 326 billion?
Yeah, 326 billion divided by... So, if you just, like, Google 326 billion in yen...
Oh, so that's $3 billion in assets.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure Activision went for more than that.
Wait, so what did you say their revenue was last year? Because he just removed 2 zeros.
Revenue of revenue 2022. I guess that's financial year ending 2022. I'm just having trouble reading. That's a comma, so I guess that's.
In other countries, they switch.
Really fit with the other numbers unless they grew huge, because that's saying 365,000 million, so 365 billion.
Okay, yeah, that's where you get to long billions and short billions. I don't think we'll be able to solve this on this podcast right now. Would you say my guess of somewhere between 20 to 30 billion dollars is a fair guess for how much Square Enix is worth? Because you got to realize Activision, Blizzard, and King, that was $70 billion. And that was one of the biggest video game companies in the world. I would say definitely bigger than Square Enix. Call of Duty is ridiculous. Yeah. So Square Enix being half that is a safe bet. And I think just video game revenue, I think when you start thinking about how much money Final Fantasy XIV makes in and the value of all these IPs, I think the manga division and the toy division, I think those are relatively unimportant bits on the calculation.
Yeah, they're relatively unimportant, but it's still, it's a way to diversify revenue. And I think that they would find that quite appealing.
I don't think that would be singular to Sony's calculation of buying a major company. And the question is whether or not Sony can even do it, because if Microsoft can spend $70 billion, that's because they're Microsoft. They're one of the biggest companies in the world. They are much more than just video games. Right. Sony, at this point, is increasingly more like a video game company that just happens to have a lot of other things.
Yeah,
Sony does have the money if they want to do it.
Yes, I think they do, but it's...
Square Enix isn't the biggest player, we know that. It's also a lot more feasible than, say, Microsoft doing it, because Japanese antitrust law is very looks down upon foreign companies acquiring things, so they'd be happier for Sony to do it or somehow Nintendo doing it than any other video game company. But also, just in general, I would like this era of everyone getting acquired to fucking stop, because it's really annoying and causes monopolistic behavior, which is fucking terrible.
I was about to say that, what's the end point of this? If they're literally buying all these massive freaking third parties, are we gonna get to a point where there are no third party publishers anymore?
No, we will not.
The end point is a collapse. It's basically a classic boom and bust cycle.
Well, I think
the end point is...
Sorry, the end point might be coming right now, because it sure looks like a recession is coming. No one's really capable of guessing what the markets are doing, so that's another reason why I would think, if I have $25 billion that I don't necessarily need to spend, maybe that's money I want to go and squirrel away under my bed versus throwing it away right now. Other thing is, even if Square Enix gets bought, even if all these major companies gets bought, the indie scene is still massive. And there will be no end to the point. There will never be a day when 4 companies own the entire video game space. At least right now, as the video game space is conceived of. There's simply too much access to the market where any small game can become gigantic. You can just get lucky. You could be the Among Us anytime. It could happen. It won't happen to many people. That kind of rags to riches story is extremely the exception rather than the rule. Capitalism is still not good, but it can still happen just about any time. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If Square Enix gets sold, they don't get sold. I'm not going to bet on it. We have plenty of wagers that we still need to remember. I think I forgot already. It's been a month.
I'm not posing a bet on that one.
No.
No.
If it happens, though, we'll have a month of topic to talk about it.
It wouldn't surprise me. That's all I'll say. It would not surprise me.
At this point, I think about it as either just fucking do it or get everyone to shut the fuck up about it, because I've been hearing shit like this for months because people really, really, really want these gigantic mega companies because they're fucking stupid. And I would just like them to shut up one way or another. And if it has to be done by having the giant mega companies happen, then fine, so fucking be it.
Yeah, console war dudes, just no. All right, this is not what the perspective you need to have on these sorts of things. Just because Microsoft bought things and you're a Sony fan and you're mad that Sony's not buying things, just no. Sorry, just screw off. No one No one needs that perspective anymore.
Also, like, you know, if you have some freaking affinity to one of these like massive video game companies, like, what are you doing? It's just, you know, one day you'll grow up like I did at one point. I used to be a Sony fanboy for a little bit, and then I realized, you know, there are more important things in life, and you know, no one company deserves
I
that.
I hate to break it to you, but the console wars, you know, they date back to the 90s and stuff, and we're targeting teenagers there. A bunch of these people are older than we are.
Yeah, true enough.
Yeah. Anyway, I lost the console wars a long time ago. I was an Apple Pippin fan, and it all ended badly for me. No, I'm kidding. I had no idea what the fuck the Apple Pippin was. I was born in 91. When the Apple Pippin came out, like 30 people bought it, and I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what the Sega Saturn was until I think like the Angry Video Game Nerd. I'm like, what? There was a Sega Saturn? I had no idea. Anyway, are we done with the news?
I didn't know Sega made consoles until like. Anyway, yeah, let's move on.
We're done with the news? We can finally talk about Morbius?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's Mobin time.
It's Morbin time, alright. So it's time for me to tell you about a little thing called Morbius. Now, this was a movie starring Jared Leto. And I did see it. I saw it in theaters, and it was really...
You actually fucking saw that?
Yeah, I really saw it. It was really boring.
You actually fucking saw it. Wow. Okay.
I've seen worse and more embarrassing movies.
I've never met anyone who has seen that piece of shit film.
Well, I guess I'm the first. I go to the movies a lot, so I've seen a lot of stuff. It was boring in just about the least interesting way. It was a callback to, I'd say, like superhero movies from 20 years ago when they would come out and they would just be like real bad and just not fantastic ways.
Like Daredevil with Ben Affleck.
Yes, exactly. No. Even better, Ghost Rider with Nick Cage.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Just, fundamentally flawed movies that no one loved, and I have nothing to recommend about it, except for one thing: Matt Smith does dance. That's it.
I think we've all seen that bit.
Yeah, that's the only part of the movie that's at all fun, and that's it. It's also a mess. Yeah?
Yeah, and it's a dance to a song. I think it's like in Afrikaans. Like, I don't remember what language it's in, but it's by an African band.
It could have been anything.
Yeah, and it's actually
Is that the one that everyone thinks is saying have sex?
Yes, that one. They think he's saying have sex, access. Yeah, and it's something in Afrikaans or some other language, but yeah, everyone think he's saying have sex, poop my pants up and poop my pants up. They think he's saying that, but
you know more about the song than I do. I can just tell you that this movie was also edited horrendously. So Matt Smith
about it was good.
Nothing about it was good. Matt Smith at one point early in the movie has to go and explain that he won guards in a card game because seemingly whatever scene where he has guards, they just cut that out. So they had to go add that line in.
Okay, interesting.
He's also called Milo the entire movie, even though his name is not Milo. Milo is what he's called as a joke. But everyone just calls him Milo. I'm way off. We need to talk about Mobius Final Fantasy. Now, I had originally planned to do this because I thought this would be a slow month where we wouldn't have much to talk about, and now we're an hour plus in. So this is gonna be one hell of an episode. I hope your seats are buckled. So Mobius Final Fantasy came to my mind because a certain game called Stranger Paradise Final Fantasy Origins came out. And I realized that game is in many ways doing many of the same things that Mobius Final Fantasy did. Mobius Final Fantasy also was originally known as Mevius Final Fantasy, until somebody told the Japanese creators, Mevius isn't actually a word. In English, it's Mobius. Please change it to Mobius because it sounds ridiculous. And then they did.
Oh shit, I remember that. I remember we had a page called Mevius Final Fantasy, and I was like, what the fuck? And then we renamed it to Mobius Final Fantasy, and I was like, what the fuck? But,
Yeah, because in Japanese, Mobius is Mibiisu, apparently. So says the headpern on Wikipedia. Yeah. So, this is a game that came out in Japan in 2015, came out in the United States and the rest of the world in 2016. It had 20 million downloads. And then on March 31st and June 30th, the game was shut down of 2020. Sorry, I forgot to say the year. Shut down forever.
So how long? So how long did it last? It lasted
5 years.
5
yeah,
years.
it lasted 5
That's
years.
Respectable.
Yes.
That's respectable for a live action game, a live service game.
I suppose, but the thing is that all mobile games will die. We've seen this with Final Fantasy Record Keeper, which is shutting down this fall. I'm sorry for every one of you who love that game. It's gone forever. But what's interesting about this is that Mobius Final Fantasy was not just a mobile game, it was like a main release. So normally when Square Enix makes these mobile games, it's the D-Leagues, or it's a different company entirely. It's like the lowest rung.
It's up in a different company. Like, you know, if you look at, like, you know, you mentioned Record Keeper, that was off to like a company called DNA or something. And then the one that's still ongoing, which is still quite popular, which is Opera Omnia, that's made by the same company that they outsourced Dissidia NT to.
Yeah, and there's the Final Fantasy 15 stuff, which is made by
part of that company, because NT was Team Ninja, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's either that or subsidiary or just some mobile company that they've made a deal with that just copy pasted some Final Fantasy 15 stuff onto a different game. That's the stuff that usually happens. Mobius Final Fantasy, however, was made by Square Enix Business Division 1. Directed by
the same people, a lot of the same people who moved on to 7 Remake.
Yes. Directed by Motomo Toriyama, who, of course, made
Everyone's favorite director.
Everyone's favorite director. Directed Final Fantasy X and the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. Produced by Yoshi...
He didn't direct 10, did he?
Yes, he did.
He directed 10 too, right?
No. Didn't he direct 10?
No way.
He did 10.
He did 10.
He did 10?
Yes.
No fucking way. I thought 10 was Kitase.
I'll check it now. Alright, it is directed by Kitase, but Motomo Toriyama was the event director, scenario writer, music director, motion capture, and voice director. Alright, he directed 10 too. Alright, you are correct. I'm sorry. I got that wrong. I'm willing to accept when I'm wrong sometimes, but he was...
I knew that... Yeah, he's been involved in the series since Final Fantasy VII when he directed... You can guess what he directed. He directed the frickin' Honeybee Inn.
Well, he directed...
Yeah, he's the event planner for Midgar, and they had to tell him to stop because they didn't want to make the entire game take place in Midgar. Then Final Fantasy VII Remake happened.
Yeah, he is so involved in 7 that he is listed as a co-director on Final Fantasy VII Remake. Anyway, Kitase...
No, he's not a co-director. He's an event director.
He was listed as a co-director on our wiki.
Co-director?
Co-director. Co-director, yes.
Alright. Okay, carry on.
Alright, so the producer is Yoshinori Kitase. You may have remembered him because he's the director of Final Fantasy X. Our main artist... Yep. Main artist is Toshiyuki Itahana, who is the Crystal... the Final Fantasy Crystal... What is that thing called? Crystal Chronicles. He's the main art guy for that entire sub-series, which sadly no longer exists. The writers are Kazuhige Nojima, who is another big player in the Final Fantasy VII space and many other things.
He's almost the writer. He wrote 7, he wrote 10. I don't know if he wrote 6 or not. But 7 and 10 are 2 of the best stories that this series has ever done.
Yeah.
And Nojima did both of them. And he also did Kingdom Hearts, if I remember correctly.
I'll get to Kingdom Hearts, because the other writer is Daisuke Watanabe, who is a big guy in creating Kingdom Hearts. It's not just all Nomura with Kingdom Hearts, there are other people involved. Watanabe is one person that's often underappreciated, his contributions. I cannot talk, because I've been talking for an hour straight. So, this is not a small game. These are the A-team of the A-team of Square Enix making a video game. And this game is gone. It is effectively scrubbed from the internet. I might be making this up right now. Can you prove that I'm wrong? Because you can't download it. Completely disappeared. And I just find that fascinating.
So it is kind of like Morbius.
Yeah.
It is kind of like Morbius. No one's seen it, so, you know, you can make up a freaking story about how fucking Shrek turns out to be the main villain, and Venom showed up and teamed up with Morbius to defeat him, and no one can disprove you because no one's seen it. So same deal with Morbius. No one's played it, so you can say whatever the fuck you want.
I don't know. I mean, I have seen the movie, but I'm not going to disappoint you by telling you whether or not that was wrong or not. It was actually not Venom. It was it
was Matt Smith.
No, it was not Matt Smith. It was the Vulture.
It wasn't even Matt Smith?
No. Matt Smith is the main villain, but the Vulture from Spider-Man No Way Homecoming, he shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Batman shows up. Michael Keaton shows up.
Despite that making no sense.
All right, I don't want to talk about that movie. The movie's bad.
Okay.
Speaking of bad, the gameplay for this thing, because I actually have played this. I played it at I played it at Comic-Con 2015 or 16. You know, it must have been 15 because the game wasn't out yet, as I recall. I was like one of the first people to play it. So this thing is basically a linear adventure, as I recall. You just walk from scene to scene and you fight a whole bunch of monsters. If you've played any of these mobile games, it is basically you hit like 3 buttons and all the stuff happens practically automatically. If you enjoyed this gameplay, I guess have fun with it. It was not for me. There was a lot of things going on, like elements and meters and cards that you can mix together. There's crystals on top, and you got to match the colors, and you can do more damage and all sorts of things. Alright, so what I did this month is I watched all the cutscenes for Mobius Final Fantasy. And when I say watched all the cutscenes, I mean I watched all the cutscenes. They are on YouTube. Season 1 is 4 hours long. Season 2 is 10 hours long. So I watched 14 hours of Mobius Final Fantasy. This is all with all the gameplay scrubbed out. So I could only imagine what 5 years of a mobile game at that pacing, how long this game possibly would be to play through. I think it would be something like 100 hours. And of these 14 hours that are here, I would say maybe you could condense this down to a solid 5-hour story, probably. I mean, you can find the cutscene collections of like Final Fantasy 13 on YouTube, and that's only about 8 hours. Final Fantasy 10, like 6. So it is This is insanely padded. It is.
So it's a mobile game.
It is a mobile game.
God,
it is crushing
how long
this land.
did that final arc of Union Cross go for? It was
oh
like
my god!
Several years where nothing happened.
Yeah, Union Cross was like you waited a month for 10 minutes of scene, and nothing would happen in most of the cutscenes.
10 minutes of scene that were irrelevant to the plot because they're just, helping. I don't remember what the plot of Wreck-It Ralph is. They help him do something and help that girl drive a car and whatever.
What? I actually, I'm going to make a note here at 1:20. I got to take a short break. I need to get some water. Because I got to get my voice back to order because I got a lot more things to say. So just chill for about a minute, all right?
Right.
Wait, are you talking about Wreck-It Ralph the game, like the film, or Wreck-It Ralph in Union Cross?
The final story arc was happening simultaneously with the Wreck-It Ralph world, because that was like the final world introduced, and there were no diversions to any other world during that time. And because it's modern Kingdom Hearts and Disney, specifically Walt Disney Studios, doesn't really like Kingdom Hearts messing with the plot, most of said plot was just a retelling of part of the story of Wreck-It Ralph.
Right, okay.
Meanwhile, there was actual plot happening in Daybreak Town, but it was happening at a pace even more glacial than the story events in the Wreck-It Ralph world.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
I think my voice is lubricated now. I think I could hear myself turning a bit hoarse as I was going. So, where were we? Union Cross crap?
that's fair.
Yeah. So...
Yeah. I mean, we're basically talking about just how badly padded mobile games are, and
Yeah, so...
like you could compress Mobius down to like 5 hours if you
so
wanted
for
to.
me-
Yeah.
So, for example, like with Opera Omnia, like, no, I do actually play that one, but like, so basically every single character, like when they have an event that introduces the character, the point is that they have to join in the second, like, mission with that. Right, so the first two cutscenes are always the same. The first cutscene is, we introduce the character, and then they say, oh wow, it's this person from that world. Like, you know, so they might say like, oh, it's from Cloud's world, or it's from Edgar's world, or something like that. And then they'll give some bullshit reason why they can't join you, and then all of a sudden there'll be a threat that shows up, and you know, you kill it in like one hit. And then they'll come back and say, you've convinced me, I'm gonna join you. And if you got rid of those cutscenes, it would be like, you know, a much shorter story than it actually like deserves to be. But with that said, that game actually does have some pretty good writing in it, all things considered. But
The writing in this is, I would say, decently translated. I would say the voice acting's mostly pretty good. The music's actually great. I forgot to credit the music person. It's somebody that worked on Final Fantasy 13
and the fact
too.
that they have
Yes?
the fact that they have voice acting in this shows how serious they were about this one.
Yes,
Because
yes. This is a
Opera
high...
Omnia does not have voice acting.
This is a high quality budget. One of the voice actors I actually recognize.
I thought Opera Omnia had some voice acting, it's just not dubbed.
Yeah, that's right. It has Japanese voice acting.
This is full English and
Japanese
Japanese voice acting.
Yeah.
Right.
So, for the most part, it actually is a pretty good-looking game. I would say the limitations of the mobile space does become apparent when there's like 7 backgrounds and there's 14 hours of story and you only have about 7 locations to set it in. Also, they are extremely limited in the number of people they can ever have on screen, so there's like 4, and this is supposed to be the entire world. So, luckily, most of this game takes place in kind of a...
The short time I played that game, I remembered it making my phone run pretty hot. So
yeah, it did.
they were definitely pushing things.
They were pushing things. This is many iPhone iterations away, so this was cutting edge at the time. But so it looks good. It looks okay. They are telling as good of a story as the space allows them to. The only thing is the story. I think I just got to tell you guys the story. You want to sit around and listen to the story?
I mean, I think it is time for my penance for the Endwalker episode of the podcast. So.
It may be. So, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-do. That's some interstitial music for you there. This is BlueHighwind recording a few days after the original podcast recording because I was largely unhappy with how that first recording went. The next 40 minutes of the original recording was me recounting the story of Mobius Final Fantasy, and I don't think I did a horrendous job of it, but apparently I did enough of a boring job that Technobliterator at one point slammed his head against his keyboard and fell asleep. And he would not wake up again until roughly to the point that I'm going to cut back into the main recording. And, if I put my co-host to sleep, I can only imagine that, anyone who's listening isn't going to fare any better, and you're just going to fast forward right through everything. I'm also unhappy with that original recording because I used some language that I think was probably ill-advised at the time. Ableist language is just kind of something that's in everyone's vocabulary. It's kind of hard to scrub out of. It just kind of still gets used casually in a way that I think we all sort of need to work with. And I don't really want to put my name next to me just using those words to describe what are actual issues. So, I think we should just do it again. This is take 2. I couldn't rehassle up my co-host at such close time. It's the end of the month. We got to get this done. So we're just going to do it. I'm just going to go and recount Mobius Final Fantasy a second time. Hopefully a better time this time. So, the world of Mobius Final Fantasy... Oh, I should also say, just to rewind a little bit, there are some very good SomeColorMage bits that, unfortunately, I am cutting. I'm cutting fat, but as they say in the movie biz, sometimes you also have to cut muscle. He laughed quite a bit in the original recording, so there was good stuff. If you want it, maybe I'll hold on to that audio, and if people desperately need to hear it, I don't think it's that great, but yeah. But again, Technobliterator just completely fell asleep, and that's just not good. Just not good for anybody. So anyway, Mobius Final Fantasy is a game that takes place in the world of Palamecia. Palamecia is a place that is trapped in an endless cycle of destruction. Much like a certain land called Spira from Final Fantasy X. There's a creature called not Sin, but Chaos, which is this giant floating sword with a face that goes around and goes... Rah! That's the only noise that Chaos ever makes. It goes... Rah! And then it shoots fire at people and kills them. So, the way this world is set up is that people wake up on a beach and suddenly are tasked with killing Chaos with virtually nothing but their wits and various swords that they find. Also, nobody wears, like, regular shirts. They all wear these kinds of muscle shirts, and their back is completely naked. They kind of all look like gym rats, except... Unfortunately, most of these people are what are known as blanks. Blanks are an utterly hopeless race of effectively lemming people. And I call them race, but it's just like everybody that comes to Palamecia becomes, for some reason, a blank and acts in a very similar way. You can tell immediately if someone is a blank because clearly their character model is less sophisticated and more poorly made than the main characters. So, our main character is Wall. I call him Wall because that's what our wiki calls him. He is the one that is going to become the Warrior of Light. He is the one that actually can do anything at all. He's not completely hopeless. He's not immediately led to his death like all the other blanks are. While Wall is waking up with no memory and very little common sense other than the ability to kill monsters, there's a voice in the sky. That voice is Vox. Vox is this overdramatic, utterly pompous, godlike figure that gives a lot of not particularly good advice. Basically, Vox is immediately untrustworthy, and Wall's suspicion that Vox is not trustworthy is made even more clear when the very next person he meets, this guy in armor called Garland, tells him, yeah, Vox is just full of shit, dude. Don't listen to anything Vox says. Vox is a complete liar. Now, I should introduce these characters a little bit. Wall is a classic, kind of closed-off, cold character. Except the way his voice actor portrays him, he comes off as extremely sarcastic. So he's just like, oh, alright guys, you want me to go and fight the monsters? I'll go and fight the monsters, but I don't know, man. This all seems like kind of bullshit. You know, I don't know. I'm just kind of a bit over all of this. Vox, of course, is a bit more dramatic and more theatrical, so he's like, yes, Warrior of Light, you are going to achieve your goals. I'm not quite doing it well. My impressions will not be perfect, but I think a impression of, you know, Xemnas from Kingdom Hearts 2 wouldn't be entirely off. Did I say Xemnas? Xemnas, right? Yeah, it is Xemnas. Oh, curses! That'd be a good voice. If they had Xemnas playing Vox, it would have been better. And Garland is just kind of an older, more, you know, authoritarian character. It's like, yeah, Vox is just kind of full of shit, bro. Actually, Garland isn't all that trustworthy. In fact, nobody's trustworthy in the first season of the game. I can actually speed right through the first season of Mobius Final Fantasy just by saying that Wall in every single chapter, meets a new character, and immediately you think that this new character has some kind of scheme or some kind of separate agenda they're not telling you about. And then later, as the story goes on, it turns out really they're as clueless as anyone else. So, like, nobody seems to really know what's going on. Garland doesn't know what's going on. You meet a Moogle named Mog. In this universe, all Moogles are part of a hive mind, as it turns out. So all Moogles share one personality. The Moogle doesn't know what's going on. You meet a fairy named Echo, and all fairies are named Echoes. They seem like they should be a hive mind, but they are not. Wall is like, I don't trust you at all, fairy. And the fairy's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't trust me because bravely default and fairies are evil, I don't know. But yeah, she doesn't know what's going on either. Later you'll meet Princess Sarah, who is the worst voice actress in this game. Let me put it this way. She's the actress who puts in by far the worst performance, I would imagine, because of how she was directed. I'm not sure what they were going for. She sounds like an English voice actress trying to do like a 90s anime, but like early 90s anime, like OVA level. She's like, oh, warrior of light, I love you, and I'm very wooden for some reason, but I'm also a girl who wooden performance and stuff. Like, I feel bad for this actress, because I haven't really seen her do many other things, and I feel bad for her. Not many people put in particularly great performances, but this is not a Dissidia level of disaster where every single voice is just the way it was directed was just complete catastrophe. This is generally okay. So then Warrior of Light also meets a witch named Maya, who is your classic kind of older, more sexually mature female character, basically a Lulu type. Every single JRPG has the woman that actually has had sex, so obviously it's outside of the man's, like the main character's sort of view. The sexual politics of JRPGs is long and complicated. I probably shouldn't even get into this. This is supposed to be the fixed recording, but I'm already screwing it up. Maya seems like she should be a very important character because she is a heretic. Also, Garland is a heretic. Also, in Maya's backstory, she was in love with a man who looks exactly like Garland, except no character ever comments upon this, and the game seems to believe that this is not a thing, even though these two models are clearly the same thing. Garland, by the way, even though he is masked and in armor previously, he takes his helmet off, and he is just an older dude with a kind of a thin beard. Very handsome dude, but I don't know why. Honestly, I don't really know why Garland's in this game, because he does not become Chaos. He is just sort of a character to be a character. Like, it seems like it's breaking the classic rules of Final Fantasy to have a Garland that never becomes a Chaos, because that's just the way this is. That's the reference they're making to Final Fantasy 1, but it just doesn't happen. Honestly, I don't know why May is in any of these games either, even though she is a playable character. But, I don't know. So, the way Palamecia works is that every generation, roughly, the time and space and all those things, they're all very vague and poorly defined. Chaos comes, kills a whole bunch of blanks. A whole bunch of blanks goes to Princess Sarah and pledge and basically say, "Witness me!" And then very stupidly go and get themselves defeated by Chaos. It is incredibly foolish, the choices they make, because blanks are effectively whatever you tell a blank in either season of this game, the blank will immediately think, oh, so I'm supposed to die. Like, that seems to be their one solution to anything. You could tell them, please fight for hope, and they'll just basically go and do something utterly just reckless and get themselves killed. You can tell them fight for despair. They'll do the same thing. Tell them go home, and they'll do that. Tell them go get the groceries, and they'll find a way to go and make a completely pointless sacrifice to go and get the groceries. Speaking of pointless sacrifices, series regular Mog, who looks exactly like the Final Fantasy 13-2 Mog. Mog pointlessly sacrifices himself and is killed by a monster, and Warrior of Light is pretty horrified by that. Because this game is utterly ruthless when it comes to the Moogles. The Moogles just get slaughtered. There is a scene where they go to Mogheim, the Moogle, city. I don't know. It's not really like a city model. It's just where a bunch of Moogles are hanging around the field. And they all get set on fire. And that's pretty damn metal. That's a choice, man. That is a choice. So, the one bit of actual detail that we learn is that many centuries, because again, time is unclear, thousands of years ago, there once was a man who has the same name that you did. His name was Wall, or it could be whatever player character you put in. He was a local hero for a small village. He had a brother named Mid, he had a girlfriend named Sarah, and they had a local lord named Chaos. The Lord had a kind of manipulative vizier named Voice, who has the same voice as Vox. Chaos, even though he shows up as a human in armor, never actually says anything during this, so a lot of the recounting's a bit weird. So, Chaos set up this whole elaborate scheme to kind of blackmail Sarah into marrying him, so that he wouldn't murder the Warrior of Light. And along the way, the Warrior of Light's little brother got murdered. Just straight up executed behind the scenes. So Sarah does agree to marry Chaos. And the local villagers immediately see through this ruse and realize what's gone on, why Sarah would agree to marry this guy. And they talk so much shit behind the backs of everyone that Chaos gets so humiliated. He gets so embarrassed, even though his scheme worked out for him, that he turns to the dark side. This mechanism of how this happened, how Palamecia went from seemingly a regular medieval fantasy world to some kind of horrifying Dissidia-esque void of endless fate and terribleness, it's not ever explained. But one day he was a guy, one day he's a giant kaiju sword. By the way, the original Warrior of Light is now calling himself Cid, because every Final Fantasy, of course, needs a Cid. And, yeah, he's got one eye now. He's also voiced by the guy who played Kenpachi Zaraki in many of the early seasons of Bleach. And I'm a big fan of that voice actor, so, Kenpachi Zaraki, best Bleach character. Getting off topic here. So, the Warrior of Light, our Warrior of Light, the one you play as, starts to realize that this repetitive cycle of violence and just pointlessness is kind of not worth supporting. He starts coming up with what are effectively a revolutionary idea that, maybe the system, fighting against chaos and the system, it seems like the system just kind of takes that in. It sort of co-ops the attempts to fight the evil. So instead, frankly, I'm not 100% sure on how it works out, but he fights Chaos so well that he kills Chaos for good. And Vox kind of freaks out because this is mostly the defeat of his plan. And when Chaos is truly defeated, we then discover what Palamecia was. Palamecia is an engine. It is an engine for generating hope. Hope is a physical force in this universe. It has mass. It is an actual force of energy. It's a fundamental power of the universe that you can grasp and do things with. I mean, it shows up as light. And despair is another force that is opposed to hope. But despair can be manipulated. In fact, Vox is using despair to generate even more hope. Because it gets, it's darkest just before dawn, and if you make people really unhappy, but then give them hope, the hope will be even stronger. And once the hope reaches maximum levels, the door of hope will open up, or the gate of hope is what they specifically call it. It's a floating metal sphere with a bunch of spikes coming out of it that opens up, and the hope that's generated in Palamecia gets shot out to what is described as another world. I don't know what that other world is, but my personal theory is that it's actually the other Final Fantasy game. So every time that your favorite Final Fantasy hero was, feeling despair, Maybe Squall didn't feel like going out of his room. Maybe Zidane felt like he was failing all his friends, but then suddenly had a burst of hope. It was not the power of friendship. It was not an implicit shift in their personality and their character trait. No. It was the misery and deaths of thousands of blanks in Palamecia that's been shot across the universe, across the multiverse, and hits them. So, good for all the Palamecians. I'm sorry that happened to all of you, but, you know, your sacrifice is recognized. And by the way, the Hope Wave does happen, and Garland decides to go and grab Sarah and take her to another world, but then everyone thinks that's a bad idea. So only Garland gets shot out of the Hope Wave, and he is then swept away out of this story forever. And his character ultimately achieves nothing. Maybe there were greater plans in Season 3 that did not happen. And then all the heroes go into a crystal, as one does. Having achieved their revolution, they now get to, you know, sort of live the post-Vox world. And one hopes, you know, now that you've won your revolution, can you be the leader of a new world? Can you go and build a better world? As it turns out, no. Because what they did is they actually created effectively a world of ruin from Final Fantasy VI. When they wake up, there's a big purple beach with destruction, and much like the anime Big O, every single person in the entire world has lost their memories. Everybody except for Warrior of Light and Maya. Season 2, I should mention, is about 2.5 times the length of Season 1. Season 1's 4 hours long. Season 2 is 2.5 hours long. It's 10 hours long, not 2.5. And it is... The padding on this game, I was going to call it an anime, is just unbelievable. For example, Season 2... Like, I could imagine if you're playing Season 2 of this game and you just saw the ending of Season 1, you're really invested in the story, you're like, oh my god, what happens next? Then, like, 90 minutes of what I see are cutscenes happen, which must have been like 6 months in real life of playing the game and just walking and beating up monsters over and over again. It could only have been interminable. I could not even imagine I couldn't imagine just how slow this was. Even having played, like, you know, not played, but having watched, like, Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. I mean, it is just awful. The one thing that does happen is that Sid tells the Warrior of Light that he's going to become something new. Something called the Warrior of Despair. Now, what is the Warrior of Despair? I don't know. No one really knows. That's the other thing. It's like, the thing with Mobius Final Fantasy is it comes up with what seem like very intriguing ideas, and you really do want to see what comes next. I think Season 2 has a actually very interesting storyline, and has a lot of promise of what's going to happen. And unfortunately, where I want the story to go, I guess is not where it goes. It just kind of becomes the standard good versus evil. You know, if we all stand together, we can defeat it. But, you know, at the very beginning, it actually is kind of a complex scenario, because Warrior of Light is living in a village called Omega. Maya and him are the only two people seemingly in the entire world that even knows what they did. And he has to go and see the consequences of what happened, which is that no one has memories anymore, including even Sarah. Now, this is the fucking hack twist that I'm sure you see coming, which is that Sarah has lost her memories. And she actually thinks that Warrior of Light is her brother. So we've ended up with a very poorly conceived, I would say. How about I use the word unfortunate scenario of amnesiatic incest? So, Warrior of Light, he's quietly fighting monsters for this village and living a bland JRPG kind of pastoral fantasy. You know, it's very much the opening hours of Nier, except possibly with less metafictional commentary on the very, you know, concept of JRPGs. This is not a Yoko Taro joint. I kind of have less faith in Motomo Toriyama to really be saying something interesting here. Though interesting things are going to happen, which is that the world is suffused with these crystals that seem to be appearing, and on them is a rune. Now, these runes show various visions, and no one's really sure what the visions are, but they seem to be instilling a kind of revolutionary consciousness in the masses that watch them. It's almost like a sort of fiction that achieves, instilling, I guess the term again is revolutionary consciousness. Like, it really is interesting how much I could apply a sort of political, even Marxist view towards what this is. It's sort of like awakening people from their sort of class interest, that people even start to realize that they even are in a class at all. Because one character that we see very early on, this is the first time, by the way, that the game is not just following Warrior of Light. It starts cutting between 3 perspectives. One is Warrior of Light's perspective, one is a girl named Sophie's perspective, and one is a hero named Graf's perspective. Now, Sophie originally is introduced with 3 question marks over her head. Like, she has no name, it's just the 3 question marks, and wondering, okay, why aren't they telling me this girl's name? And this goes on for hours of the cutscene I watched. So, unfortunately, the game is showing its hand, which is that, oh, we're going to go and tell you what their name is, but you guess that when they start calling her Sophie, maybe they're not being on the level about it. Graf, by the way, I should also say Sophie is the classic sort of Pinello, sort of Aiko, kind of Riku from Final Fantasy X, the really bubbly girl kind of archetype. She also fights with a big mace, which is kind of cool. And Graf is the Balthier type. He's the very dramatic and theatrical, my sword will slay the enemies. Graf is my favorite character in these games, just because he's a more dynamic and more, just more charismatic lead. I mean, I guess there is kind of a charisma to the, I guess I'll just say it, emo boy, but never really landed for me. I prefer the guy that knows that he's the lead of a show and is going to put on a show for us. So, onto these runes. The runes start showing Sophie in particular a vision of a city named Anosia. Now, I am something of a person who's knowledgeable of Final Fantasy. I have no idea what Anosia is a reference to. It does not seem to be a town in anything that I know of. Feel free to correct me. But Anosia is a city that does not exist, at least not that anyone can tell. If it's from another universe or whatever was going on with it, whatever their greater plans, it's never explained in this season. But what is happening in Anosia is something very interesting, which is that there is a political conflict in the city. There are 2 groups. One is called the Collective, who seem to be running things. They're a very violent, hegemonic group of people that look like black mages with masks. They are effectively, like, what they're demanding is, it says it right there, it's collectivization, but sort of a state dictatorship where everyone must play their roles and must play it to the point of death. Like, you will work yourself to death for the collective. They're kind of, really, they're just Stalinists or Maoists. And the other group are the free citizens who, of course, are calling for slightly less state control than a Stalinist or Maoist would claim for. By the way, I should also say, this is something I do say in the original recording, I am not a fan of Bolsheviks. I'm not a fan of Joseph Stalin, not a fan of Mao Zedong. I know people on Twitter like to quote Mao about landlords. That's fine. Landlords are bad. But Mao is a horrible person that did terrible things to China. So if your plan is that the ends justify the means and you're going to force a revolution through no matter how many millions need to die, it's not going to work. That simply is a failure. All you end up creating is a system of brutality as bad as the fascism or capitalism, much worse than the capitalism you're trying to fight. I don't subscribe to horseshoe theory, but you can be fucking bad. It also makes socialism just look bad. Like, you set back the ultimate goal of the project by doing this. I think I'm off topic. I may have wandered a bit off base. Anyway, the Free Citizens don't really have a very clear political basis, at least not as much as the Collective has. Mostly that they just oppose the Collective. So, I mean, they're libertarian as much as you could say, like, I don't know, like, anyone is libertarian compared to Mao Zedong, you know? Kinda, you know, like, they're mostly defined by their opposition. They're, I guess, like the modern Democratic Party dealing with the Republicans. So, Anosia and this kind of class struggle sort of breaks in, and the class consciousness sort of comes into Sophie's mind. Because Sophie was working for an unnamed village, just doing a horrible job of picking up items and bringing them home, doing some boring task, and she decides, you know what, this is not worth it. I'm going to not do that. As a matter of fact, the matron is reminding me of the Collective, and my chores, she's actually a slave owner, so screw you, I'm leaving. I'm going to go be part of Anosia. She also discovers that Graf is her brother, and Graf discovers that Sophie is his sister. And before you start thinking that maybe this seems sketchy, that you're following a crystal and allowing what appears to be fiction to define your reality, the characters mention this about nonstop. Like, the game is not at all being subtle with what it is doing here. That maybe Sophie's starting to believe that she is this person named Sophie. Maybe that's not actually true. Like, she says that constantly. So I'm not giving away a twist here. No spoilers, because what happens is telegraphed with a friggin' sledgehammer or Sophie's giant mace slamming you over the head over and over again. What I do like is that this whole story kind of reminds me of a short story. This is a story by the writer George Luis Borges. Is called Talon Ukbar Orbitateris. Borges is a great Argentine writer, very interested in the concept of infinity, which is interesting because this is Mobius Final Fantasy. I wonder if someone possibly had wrote that. Talon Ukbar Orbitateris is a story where the real world becomes so obsessed with a fictional country called Ukbar and the Legend of Talon that people stop believing in the real world anymore, to the point that the real world effectively ceases to exist, and fiction erases our history and becomes the fact. So it's a cool story, and it's kind of cool what's happening here because, you know, eventually villagers that you meet in the game become part of the Collective, or become what I guess are the Free Citizens, whatever they are. I kind of wish the game had focused more on this idea, and we had seen, you know, more of the conflict between a fictional reality and an actual reality. The only problem is the reality of Mobius Final Fantasy is very poorly defined. So Season 1 didn't even have towns or much of any NPCs at all other than the Mughals who got set on fire. Meanwhile, with Warrior of Light and Sarah starts seeing visions of a tower of hope. And Warrior of Light's attempts to kind of control her, because he kind of starts coming off as a real manipulative dick. He just really just somebody that's like, you start to wonder, like, what's going on with this guy? You're controlling this woman that, frankly, you barely know. Warrior Light and Sarah had, like, the just bluntest and most meaningless love story in Season 1. Like, because everything in Season 1 was operating on this kind of force of fate and prophecy. So, like, oh, Warrior of Light and Sarah have to fall in love. It's just the rules. And it's like, that's not really a basis for a particularly great romance, and the writing is just not here. And it only gets squickier now that one of them is pretending to be the sister character in every anime to the point like, oh, Oni-chan, I need to go and cook you supper, don't you? It's just like, oh, God fucking damn it. What is this fucking shit? So she becomes a more headstrong, separate character, and Maya, who, as I mentioned before, basically does not exist in this season. She does so little. There's one moment when she kind of buys into the whole rune thing and kills a bunch of people, then she's immediately cured, but that is it. Like, she is window dressing. She is Yuffie in the airship, where she's still part of the party, but, like, you're never using her. And it's not like this is a game that actually has a party system at all. It's just one character that you control fighting monsters. As far as I can tell, I might be wrong because I didn't play this, but it really does seem like structured just from the cutscenes that it's only one character at one time. So Sarah goes off and she decides to go find the Tower of Hope, but interestingly, it's actually Sophie that finds the Tower of Hope while looking for Enosia. Along the way, by the way, she can't find Enosia anywhere. She finds the Tower of Hope, and as I mentioned before, the blanks are basically lemmings. So all the guys that are at the Tower of Hope, they are working themselves to death because hope. Just like, we gotta do hope. We gotta do hope steps, hope. And Sophie's like, no, this is really a bad idea. I think you guys should work part of the day and rest another part of the day, so maybe you all manage to actually survive and accomplish something. And they're like, oh my God, Sophie, you filled us with even more hope. Which, of course, will come back to bite her later because these guys start getting really manic with the hope later, and a whole bunch of them get killed. Because again, like, you can't do anything with them. They're like 3-year-olds where basically they'll find anything in the house and try to, erase their existence with it because they just don't know any better. Anyway, Sophie is now kind of trapped between two fictional paradigms. There's the Enosia one with the collective versus the free citizens, and there's the Tower of Hope, which is this bastion to fight off the Warrior of Despair, whatever that is. Not that anyone seems to know. And it all seems like this is all kind of being made up on the spot by some kind of cosmic deity. Perhaps a very pompous cosmic deity that is untrustworthy and full of lies. You know, you just throwing it out there. This could all be Vox manipulating everybody. This is what I was guessing the entire season, and as I continue to recount, we'll find out if I was right. Meanwhile, Graf actually goes to Warrior of Light's village, Omega. He has the misfortune of coming just around the time that the village is completely subsumed in collectivism. I guess that's the term to use. I guess. He ends up killing one of Warrior of Light's friends. There are these 3 friends that Warrior of Light gets. None of them are particularly important or interesting. They don't even have their own unique models. Or, like, if they do, it's, like, one of the laziest jobs that anyone's ever done to build a model. So, anyway, he gets stabbed by another one, and he does escape with his life. It's at this point he starts getting visions of becoming the Warrior of Despair. And later we'll see an evil Graf appear in his dream. And this is classic Star Wars rules here, where, you know, you don't kill your father, you kind of spare him. And by sparing him, you become the better man, right? And then you win over his heart. No, that's not how it works. Evil Graf just kills good Graf. And then it's evil Graf running the show rest of the time. He becomes the Warrior of Despair. Turns out that there's evil fairies manipulating everything. They're actually the ones that create the monsters. Turns out all the monsters you've been fighting this whole time, fairies have been doing it. They're also the ones creating the runes. They're creating the illusions that everyone's falling in love with. They give him an extra spicy rune because inside of that rune is the power of chaos. And now Graf is as immortal as Chaos was in Season 1. And Sophie, meanwhile, at the Tower of Hope, has so filled them all with hope that she's effectively playing the Princess Sarah part Until Princess Sarah shows up like 5 minutes later and then just becomes the Princess Sarah part again. And it's like, oh, wow, we've reverted right back to season 1, haven't we? Again, sure seems like we're getting manipulated by some kind of asshole in the sky. I wonder who could be doing that. I really do. Chaos shows up. Sophie almost gets killed fighting it. Various characters who are not particularly worth going into or dealing with. They actually do get killed, but then show up later. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention very well, but I swear to God, these dudes are dead. So I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know what I misunderstood at the time. All the kind of cool metafiction stuff, it's all gone. Because, like, at this point, whatever reality there was, it's gone. Because we're just back to season 1 again. I mean, you know, it's like you beat capitalism and capitalism just came right back. God damn it. You know, it's almost a sort of... You know, there was like a 70s kind of view in socialism where that capitalism was unstoppable and would find you no matter where. If you ever read... You know what? I'm going off topic again. I'm going to stop. I don't particularly care for those sorts of views. There has to be this concept of defeatism that you can't defeat capitalism. Not particularly useful. I find these concepts in Final Fantasy games where it's just this endless cycle of fate that you can't break away from. I find that also pretty frustrating. I don't particularly like those kinds of stories. Neither does Warrior of Light. He shows up. He saves Sophie's life at one point. Then Graf as Warrior of Despair shows up and he stabs Sophie. Then he reveals that Sophie is not Sophie. Guess what? Oh, big twist. Yeah, it turns out that Graf's real sister Sophie, she died years ago. Somehow, it's never properly defined or explained, but this fills Sophie with so much despair that she becomes a different beacon or avatar of evil, as one does. You know, she turns towards the dark side, and Warrior of Light, he starts to notice something going on, that, you know, Graf sure is making a lot of big, pompous speeches. This sort of reminds me of a guy named Vox, which Vox then reveals himself. Yep, Vox is behind it all. And Vox has another twist for everybody. Turns out he does not want Graf to be the Warrior of Despair. He doesn't even want Sophie. Like, it seems like there's like a bit of whack-a-mole. Like, who's actually going to be the final boss? Is it going to be Graf? No. Is it going to be Sophie? No. Actually, the one he wants to turn towards the dark side, his new, strongest apprentice, his greatest work, it's going to be Wall. And how's he going to convince Wall to go and join up on his evil side? Well, he's going to reveal a bit of a plot twist. This is one I didn't see coming. This is one I never would have even imagined because it's real bad. It's shocking. It turns out that Sarah has had her memories this whole time. And this kind of syscon thing that she's been doing with Warrior of Light, she was conscious of it the whole time. And Warrior of Light so is shocked and filled with just abject, how would you react? Like, really, like just put yourself in this scenario. You would never be in this scenario where you would have a girl who is a romantic interest that you're allowing to think is your sister. But let's say that it turns out you weren't manipulating her, she was manipulating you. And your whole relationship is this just horrible, twisted web of lies and deceit and gross fetishes and God knows what else. He so flips out that he becomes the Warrior of Despair. Yeah, it's Wall. Wall is the final boss. Or is he? So, you might have noticed that Sophie has no name and no identity and no backstory. They get rid of that real easy. They do it like Simpsons Principal Skinner style, where they ask Sophie, like, you know, Sophie, you can be anything you want. You can pick any name you want for yourself. Be anything. Go anywhere. Do anything. It's like, oh, you know what? I think I'm just going to be Sophie. It's easier that way. It's like, all right, cool. We don't got to rename the character. We don't got to rename the page on the wiki. It's better that way. I'm fine with that. So, all of the heroes join together, and they have a big, grand fight against Warrior of Light, who has now become this dark avatar of pure evil. Because, of course, he has. And, he's looks like the classic mono art of Chaos from Final Fantasy 1, because of course he would. They knock his mask off, and, Sarah goes and gives her big corny speech to try to win him over to go back to the good side. Like, no, Wall, you're so important to me, and love, and truth, and whatever. Doesn't work at all. As it turns out, it's actually Echo from Season 1. Her thing, her tsundere speech of, you big dummy, come back and save me, whatever bullshit, you know the tropes. It's all so stock. It's so stock. That works. He turns good. And then everyone's standing around, they're like, yeah, well, that was kind of a final boss, but we need to have a final boss, because we're not getting a Season 3. We're not getting one. We gotta figure something out. We gotta have some kind of grand conclusion of this. That's when Vox, up in the sky. Vox has multiple points during this game complain that he doesn't have a body. He's like, yeah, I would love to fight Chaos myself, but I'm a disembodied voice that can only manipulate people with bullshit prophecies and whatever. But, yeah, you do it. You guys got it. You got it. And they're all like, Warrior of Light looks up to the sky, looks up to Vox, and he says, you know what, Vox? 1v1 me IRL. And then Vox is like, yeah, what if I took physical form and 1v1 you'd IRL? And that's what he does. Vox becomes a armored dude that looks like Emperor Mateus from Final Fantasy II. I did miss a important detail. Warrior of Light, when he was evil, he had a sword with an infinity sign on it. That is the only time in any of these games that the term Mobius in any way means anything. There is no Mobius. There's no mention of infinity. There's nothing else out that. There's just one sword with an infinity sign on it. That's it. And the thematic recurrence of a recurring cycle of evil, whatever. Capitalism controls everything. Fuck you, whatever. Go on. So, now that Vox is a physical form, everyone fights him and beats him up. And then Vox dies, and he goes floating back up to the sky, and because he's an immortal, awful god thing, everyone's just like, you know what, he's gonna come back. We're just gonna have to fight him again, aren't we? Just gonna have to do this fucking shit over and over again. And Warrior of Light's like, dude, we're not getting a Season 3. They've run the calculations. It's over here. We need kind of a better conclusion. So, Vox, why don't you next time become the Warrior of Light? And Vox is like, oh, that would be the ultimate illusion of them all. Or he actually says greatest illusion, but, ultimate illusion, final illusion, whatever you want to say. Almost like a Final Fantasy. And that's where it all wraps up. They play the Crystal theme, and there's a bunch of chanting ladies, and there you go. That's your game. That's Mobius Final Fantasy, the end. Oh, and one final note. I do want to credit the YouTube channel that has posted and hosted all the videos I watch for these cutscenes. This is the channel Dark Cloud. You guys have, I don't know how many of you are, but you did a fantastic job archiving this game, and I thank you so much for hosting those videos, because otherwise this game truly would be lost from time. So thank you so much, Dark Cloud. Just want to go and credit you guys. Anyway, back to the original recording. Let me just go bomb, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-da, bomb, 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 bomb. Hey, Blue. I think Techno actually did leave, because I haven't heard from him in a while.
I didn't pay attention to any of that shit.
For a second, I thought we actually had killed you when we, had started talking about all the fetishes this game seems to have.
So anyway, Vox dies, and he's gonna come back, and he's gonna be a good guy this time. And then the Crystal theme plays, and it's a very good rendition. And everyone lives, I guess, happily ever after. The end.
Good for them.
I guess. So that was 14 hours of my life.
I think the person in all that story who might have been the most correct is Garland at the end of season 1 going, "Fuck this shit, I'm going to ride the hope stream out of this universe."
I'm gonna just get out of here. I've had enough of this crap. I'm so... Garland was like my favorite character in season 1, and I'm so annoyed that he never showed up in season 2 at any point. Maybe they had bigger plans for this character. He also never became Chaos. Like, that's against the rules. You can't have a Garland and a Chaos, and the twain shall never meet. What the hell?
Yeah.
My lord, is that legal?
Apparently it is. So anyway, I suppose my responsibility as an admin on this wiki is to go and fill in all our unfinished Mobius Final Fantasy pages with all the information I have, but I refuse to do so. I just won't.
I don't blame you, mate.
Well, at least we have this now, so no one else has to look at the 14-hour video to do so. Now they just have to watch this 2-hour video.
Yeah, or the 2-hour podcast, or if you want, I have my notes saved. I can go and send them to you, including because season 1, my notes are like 500 pages long, like 500 words. It's real simple. Like, there's not much that happens in season 1. Season 2 I've cut out so many meanders in the plot. Just so many, just nothing happens where this goes that way, and just long conversations that just hope, despair, hope, despair, hope, despair. I cannot fucking hear either one of those words. And if you remember that Hope is a character in Final Fantasy 13, it just becomes incoherent at that point. So I've now done my duty.
The thing with these weird ass freaking mobile ports, right, is they always pull you in by saying yo, you can play as your favorite characters, so the whole pulling point of Record Keeper originally and now Opera Omnia is, you can make a team of freaking my favorite team is you're gonna put Kafka in the same team with Tifa and Orin, or you can mix and match all these people together, so the whole thing that pulls you in is all these other characters, right? The other people that you actually care about, right? And then they go off and tell their own original story with their own original cast of characters. And motherfucker, I don't care about this shit. Fucking War of the Visions does the same thing. Because they have this whole, the whole drawing point of, it's Final Fantasy Tactics, except you can have whoever you want in your party. So recently they added Terra, Locke, and Celeste. It's it's Final Fantasy Tactics, but your units are Terra and Cecil and whatever, right? By the way, we have this whole ass story that's basically a much weaker version of the Tactics story, much weaker. And actually the whole game is about that, and I'm why do you not care about this shit?
Well, I
don't know why they do it.
I do have some good news, is that there is Cloud and Squall and Tidus, add-on stories that you could do. I did not watch those cutscenes because each one of those is 2 hours long, and I put in enough work already. I also I do want to bring up I think it was called Near Resurrection or Reincarnation. I think Reincarnation, that was it. That was the game from last year that I played for 2 weeks. I played 5 hours a day because I was really interested in where the story was going. It starts out, it's got this experimental structure of you're a girl walking through this ruins tower thing, but along the way you keep seeing these interesting short stories and are kind of curious, because some of the stories seem like they connect and all these individual characters and twists and stuff. You're this whole web of things could create this this web of metafiction, and maybe there's some deeper meaning to any of it. And of course, the answers are just not that interesting because they have to pad this out for fucking half a decade. And you end up with nothing. So if there's any conclusion here, it's don't play mobile games, because even when they have cool, experimental, postmodern concepts coming in, even when I can reference Borges in my description of them, they're still a damn waste of time, and they'll disappoint you, and they'll be shut down, and nobody will mourn them.
I am instantly turned off by any story that does nothing but pad out the time and keep giving me constant cliffhangers, like dangling over my head, like, you know, something exciting is gonna happen and there's gonna be some payoff, and then it never gets there because they have to pad the fuck out of it, right? That's why, you know, I feel like the only person on Earth who disliked the Loki show. I fucking hated it because that's all they were doing.
I
It was just
quite like the
episode
Loki show.
ended a fucking cliffhanger.
Well,
the Loki show.
I liked it up until the very end when it turned out to be a cliffhanger, and they're like, "Oh, you want to know?"
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wait. But what was great about that is you want to know what happens next. You got to watch Ant-Man 3, and I'm like, "Fuck no, I do not need to watch Ant-Man 3. Go fuck yourself. Right. I am not watching any of those goddamn movies. I hate Ant-Man so much." Anyway, we have gone.
I don't hate Ant-Man, but I do hate them ending on a fucking cliffhanger. Like,
we have gone.
Every episode ended on a cliffhanger.
We've gone
season does.
We've gone extraordinarily long. I just want to point out one thing: is that Mobius Final Fantasy feels in conversation with Dissidia and actually also, you know, Stranger of Paradise. And I'm kind of curious why they keep adapting Final Fantasy 1 into these extremely opaque, bizarre, complicated systems of fate and betrayal and the gods trapping you. And like you always get the sense that whatever you do is hopeless, and if you play along and beat the next boss, you're playing into whatever grand scheme of whatever awful deity is ruling you along. I don't know why this is their vision of Final Fantasy 1, which was a game where, you know, you and a group of buddies go to a dungeon and you beat up a monster and then you save a village. That's all that game was. Why can't it be that? Why does it always have to be
they're just kind of extrapolating Garland's big plan for, you know, immortality, that he gets to kill the heroes over and over again.
Yes.
And to just, like, the thing is, it's a game from the 80s, even with the interesting plot hooks. It wasn't meant to be explored that deeply.
It was just a D&D campaign that you played on your NES. That was all it was.
Yeah, basically.
And instead it becomes this just incredibly weighty thing. I'll just be honest, like, I don't like the way Final Fantasy XIII's plotting is. There is something cool about this tension in a video game sense of you being trapped in, maybe ludonarrative dissonance is not the right word, but like, your only verbs that you have are exactly what's going to play into the evil mastermind's plan, and you are trapped in it, and you must continue along the route. There's a cool tension there. I don't think any of these games have quite managed to nail it in a satisfying way. Instead, it just feels like I'm stuck in this annoying story with these annoying characters following this annoying guy's instructions, and you know what? Fuck the Falcion, fuck Cocoon, whatever. It can all blow up. I just don't care at a certain point. And then I become the sarcastic Warrior of Light guy. And now I understand why he's such a, you know, caustic asshole. Because he's stuck in this idiocy. He's the one person in the entire world who realizes how dumb this all is. And he likes Moogles.
I was gonna say, like, you make a really interesting point. Like, you know, it's like all three of those have seemed to have gone with the idea of the story being that, like, you know, that everything you do is effectively pointless because it's all, like, preordained to be.
It's all cycles of, yeah. It's all cycles
like,
of cycles of cycles. Ugh.
It's interesting that you point that out because I never noticed that before, but that's exactly what they're freaking doing with all their Final Fantasy 1 adaptations, or, like, prequels, or whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
It is, yeah. I mean, they keep going with that same theme, and when you think about it, it's such a depressing theme, but it's also so self-defeating, because it's like, haha, we're gonna keep giving you more Final Fantasy 1 content, and our excuse for that is that it's all preordained by the gods to force you to go through it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I'm like, that is shitty writing. That
I don't know if it's bad writing. It's not writing for me, I guess, is how I'd put it. I could see the appeal of it for some people, but I would definitely not recommend watching all 14 hours of Mobius Final Fantasy. I would also not recommend the game, because the game was extremely boring. As for what to do with this thing,
like, at least with all of these things, at least Stranger Paradise had a sense of humor about it.
Right.
Yes, this game has no sense of humor at all. Even the Moogles, are fucking blown up, and they're tortured horribly. The cute mascot characters.
Paradise makes fun of itself, and Dissidia gives you all these fun matchups with the Final Fantasy characters that you loved, and you kind of don't care about the story of Dissidia. Like, no one's going into Dissidia thinking, oh wow, I'm gonna have this epic tale where my heroes join forces against, like, no one gives a fuck about that. They care about, having this fighting game where you get to pit freaking Garland against Zidane or whatever. Like, that's all they care about. Like, they don't care about the story around it.
I did care about the story, and I was
going for it.
I did care about the story, and I was immensely disappointed. I remember playing through all the Final Fantasy games when I was a kid, and I would, like, imagine what would happen if all the heroes of all these games and all the villains, they had their big epic fight, and instead what came out was this just immensely tedious. That's the other thing, is like these cycles of you cannot break out, it also helpfully allows them to pad the game out to a ridiculous degree. So exactly. Like 13 you walk like for 40 hours, and in this game, you walk for 40 hours, and in Dissidia, you play 40 hours of just the same fights over and over again. So, I don't know. We have to end. Yeah, I cannot keep going at this point.
Yeah, we can end. I think
all right.
That's a good point to end.
This has been an enormously long episode.
Basically, don't play this game.
Well, you can't play this game. Even if you could, don't play it.
Anyway.
Maybe
don't imagine yourself playing this game.
Maybe some games are better off destroyed forever. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the Final Fantasy Wiki podcast. That was the month of July. Next month we'll do something else, I guess. My name is BlueHighwind. I'm the host of this thing, and I'm sorry if that description of the game was a bit tedious. That was the best I could do.
It's not his description. It's the game itself. It is not your description.
I suppose that is true.
There was no description you could have given where you, like, didn't... I mean, you're saying you already left out a ton of details, but, like, there's no description you could give that would be, like, listenable and under, like, freaking 15 minutes.
I could not do it under 15 minutes.
You know the way you could do it under 15 minutes is if you have a Busta Rhymes rap for the whole thing.
I'm not doing
That's
that.
the way you could do it.
No, I'm not doing that. That will not be done.
Full circles of things that happened before Blue started recording.
Yes, and nobody even knows what you're talking about. Anyway, to wrap things up, last final thing I must say is our music is La Montaña de los Caballos Jovenes, which is the Mount Koltz music from Final Fantasy VI. It is from XPRTNovice. Thanks for letting us use your music. It is from the Balance and Ruin OC Remix album, whatever the hell. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll be back in August with something. I don't know what, but it'll be shorter than this one. Have a good night.